I'm Lonnie Bunce, the director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The Scurlocks studio really was the studio of Addison the father, Robert and George the sons, which gave us a sweep not only of Black Washington, but of Black America. One of the things that is important about the Scurlock photographs is that what they attempt to do is to capture the promise of Black life. But they also want to capture as best they can what they see are the realities of that life. And so what you see in many of the images is, first of all, a way to celebrate people whose work, whose endeavors really help to transform America. And if you look at pictures like the NAACP ball, this wonderful array of well-dressed African Americans, what you're also seeing is a conscious effort to demonstrate that there is an America that carries itself in a way, a Black America especially, that is fundamentally different than the way most of the media, the white media, depicted them. What's important about the Scurlocks is that they are seen as not just the people who document the African American experience, but they're seen as the people who participate. The joke used to be, when you were married, if your picture wasn't taken by a Scurlock, you weren't really married. In some ways, it was, if your image wasn't taken by a Scurlock, you weren't important to the African American community. One example is the Scurlocks having a party with Duke Ellington at the piano. It's a wonderful image that speaks of middle-class respectability, and it speaks of a time when celebrities weren't that far removed from who we are. And then if you look at how the Scurlocks capture John and Jackie Kennedy when they came to Howard shortly before his election as president, and it reminds us of when Howard was really the capstone of Negro education, and that it was crucially important for anybody who wanted both the Black vote, but also to understand the Black community, to come to Howard. I thought about how important that university has been to all Americans, and that in some ways, looking at those images of Ralph Bunche and Kelly Miller and Lucy Diggs Slowe, all the great faculty of Howard, I suddenly realized that people need to know that story. And so when you look at those images, you see these amazing strivers. You see these people who have acquired homes and businesses, contrary again to the prevailing stereotypical images of African Americans. So in some ways, I think the Scurlocks saw themselves as partners with Du Bois in sort of crafting a new vision of America, a vision where racial equality and racial improvement was possible, led by a talented tenth. One of the things that I wish the Scurlocks did more of had been photographs of those that didn't make it in the city. And I think that one of the images that means a lot to me is of the children playing in the alley, in dirt, in poverty, with the Capitol in the background. And in some ways, what that image reminds us is that Washington is really one of the best places to see the contradictions in America. It's a place to see where you have middle class of all colors, but you have very poor African Americans historically, and the fact that you're within the shadow of freedom, shadow of the symbol that says all that's possible in America, but recognizing that for those kids, all was not possible. We often forget how important the symbols of freedom, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, are to America, and especially are to Black America, because what Marian Anderson does, what Barack Obama does when he speaks in front of the Lincoln Memorial, is say that these are the symbols that speak America, and we as African Americans can claim those to help point some of the contradictions in America. So you see George and Robert photographing the riots in 1968, finding images that aren't going to be sold in the window of the Scurlock studio of people who are not doing as well. They, too, were interested in portraiture and capturing a middle class, but I think they were able to sort of step a little more outside the areas that Addison the father did. Because of the record they left behind, they enable us to remember. They enable us to remember names of people who were grand, the Du Boises, the Booker T. Washes, the Anna Julia Coopers. It allows us to remember the woman pushing a shopping cart full of all of her belongings, not being able to find a home in Washington, but yet not giving up. So in some ways, the greatest contribution of the Scurlocks is that they pictured a promise, that they captured aspects of America, aspects of Black America that weren't often seen. And because of what they did, generations in the future will be able to understand the story.